I'd like to welcome you to Wednesday, November 2nd. And today is actually All Souls Day. One of the passages that I say to myself almost daily is just thinking about the 23rd Psalm, which leads me to the words for this morning, where it says, "He leads me beside the still waters, and he restores my soul." I was thinking about All Saints Day, All Souls Day, All Saints Sunday coming up, and it's really a very spiritual and special time of the year, because I put on the sign, "How is your soul?" Because today and this week is a time to remember those who have gone before. And when I think about the words, "How is your soul?" I ask myself that. And as I walked into church this morning and I thought about the last couple of days, I realized that my soul has been kind of wrinkled. Many times I'll ask somebody, "How is your soul?" Because there's a lot of stuff going on in the world. And sometimes that can get us down. And also, during this All Saints Souls, All Saints Day, and All Saints Sunday week, I think about those who have gone before. I think about those who have been a part of my life and who are a part of my journey, even though they're gone. And I miss them a lot. And sometimes when you miss somebody a lot, your soul gets kind of wrinkled, and you maybe feel a little bit sad. Yesterday, I talked to you a couple weeks ago about the gentleman whose funeral I did a while back, and his name was Zach, and he was killed in a car accident at the age of 33. And his wife called me the other day, and they have 4 young kids. And they have 2 sons, Mikey, who's 7, and Rowan, who's only 4.5. And they have some questions about God, and she asked if they could come over and talk a little bit because they're confused. And so they came over yesterday afternoon, the 2 boys and their mom, Mikey and Rowan. And Mikey, I don't really know him. I only met him at the funeral. And he kind of goes, "Pastor Don, how come I can't see God?" And I tried to share with him that we don't see God, but we see God's Spirit at work when somebody is kind and gracious. And then he said, "Well, what about your soul? Where does it go after you die?" And I said, "I can tell you're missing your dad, aren't you?" And he said, "Well, yeah." And he said, "Well, your dad is gone, but his soul is not. That soul is something inside of you that makes you you, and your dad's special." And so I'm trying to think about how I could explain it to him. And I said, "Let's go for a walk." And so I took Mikey and Rowan and their mom, and I took them for a walk out back. And they went in the back 40, and they just started running around. And I said, "Why don't you just stop for a minute?" And I went to one of the places where one of your loved ones' ashes are buried. And I said, "This is where we buried the ashes of this person. And you can come here, and you can see the person's name, and you can think about that person. And it's a reminder that that person's spirit is always going to be with you. And I know in a couple of weeks we're going to go to the cemetery and bury your dad's ashes. And your dad's ashes are going to be there. He won't be there, but he is going to be inside the heart and soul of who you are." And he looked at me and he said, "Really?" I said, "Really?" And he said, "Well, what about heaven? Is my dad in heaven?" And I said, "Well, yeah." He said, "Will I ever see heaven?" I said, "Well, sometimes we see a little bit of heaven on earth." And I said, Mikey, when somebody is kind to you, or when you're kind to somebody else, that's where heaven lives on earth. Because heaven means to be with God. Your dad is with God. He's in that kingdom that will never end. But also, you're with God. When you're kind, when you're gracious, when you see something really good happen, then you see a little bit, a glimpse of heaven. And that's what your dad was all about. He was just a good guy. and that goodness is always going to live in you. And he goes, really? I said, really? And I said, if you ever just want to come to church some Sunday and come to Sunday school, we talk about heaven and God and all that kind of good stuff a lot. It was really interesting seeing how he had so many questions. And I realized I didn't have a whole lot of answers, because the answers to his questions are in the heart and soul, I guess, of each one of us. Because your soul, heaven, God, eternal life, those are things that we kind of discover along the way. We can't explain them. We can't prove them. We can just kind of embody that spirit in the way we treat each other. And hopefully Mikey and Rowan and their mom Caitlin, they will discover the goodness of God's grace and know that their dad is always going to be with him. It's like a little bit later on this morning, we're going to say goodbye to Shirley Sally. She lived to be 92. And it's kind of appropriate that on All Souls Day, we say goodbye to somebody who really exuded the goodness and the humility of God's Spirit. Yeah, when I walked in this morning, my soul was kind of wrinkled, a little bit sad. But our soul is who we are. Our soul is kind of our own personal blueprint. And my soul and your soul, each one of us is unique. But our soul is who we are. And it gets sad, it gets happy, but most of all, our soul is that little hunk of Jesus that lives inside of us every day. I want to wish you a blessed All Souls Day, and I look forward to talking to you on Friday. God bless.